You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel. Now we're going to be talking to Ian. Ian, as always, it's good to see you here at the Monday Night Community Show.
Thanks very much, Daniel, and always good to be here. I'm here with the Royal British Legion hat on. I'm here in the context as the chair of the Sheerness branch. I always correct myself there. I nearly say the Sheppey branch, but there is some news which I'll tell you a little bit later regarding that. But what a lot of people ask me, what is the Royal British Legion? Well, we are actually within the second year of the 100th commemorations of the First World War, the Great War, and over 6 million Britishmen took part in the fighting, and about 725,000 lost their lives, and 1.75 million people returned home with injuries and disabilities. Now, some of these veterans, the heroes who gave us our freedom, were unable to find work and became homeless, resorting to living on the streets and begging for food. Now, many of the wives of those who had died found themselves homeless and had to live and work in degrading workhouses. The children were also sent to children's home. And the country was certainly not a land fit for heroes. So Lance Bombardier Tommy Lister decided that if the government would not do anything to help these people, then he would do everything he could. He wanted the veterans to find work and somewhere to live. He wanted to provide food and shelter to those families who had lost their husbands and fathers during the war. And as a result, well over 90-odd years ago now, in May 1921, so we're talking 94 years, the British Legion was born. It didn't become the Royal British Legion until the 1970s. And as in November 1921, the first poppy appeal was held to raise money for the veterans and their families on the 11th of November, and first ever Remembrance Day was held.
And Ian, I think you were next going to cover the sort of origins of the poppy.
Yeah, I am. Again, you played some music, Band of Gold. 1963. I was a very young boy then, but it came out again in the 70s. And every time that song comes on, I always think of a girl called Carol Burrows, who I used to know. And she ended up marrying a mate of mine, and I still keep in touch with her on Facebook. But I can never disassociate that song with her, because it's something we used to play in our youth. But coming on to the poppy, why did the poppy become the emblem of the Legion? Well, during the Great War, areas of France and Belgium saw some of the bloodiest fighting ever, and some areas were completely devastated. No roads or houses, no trees, and certainly no grass, just a load of mud. And the only flower that appeared to survive was the blood-red poppies. And the poppies grew every year and became a symbol of life, of hope, of colour, and assurance to those fighting. And if you've ever dumped any poppy seeds, they can actually lie dormant for many, many years. And it was only when all the bombs blew up all the soil and everything, these dormant seeds came up, were watered, and the whole fields became full of poppies. And inspired by this flower, on the 3rd of May 1915, a Canadian medical officer named Colonel John McCrae wrote some words in his pocketbook, and these were later published as a famous poem in Flanders Fields. I'm not going to actually read Flanders Fields' poem here, but it's very interesting because Canadians were involved in the First World War, and there was one Canadian mother who lost 11 sons in the First World War. 11 sons. Think about that, Daniel. She actually lost 11 sons in one war, in one period of time. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? 11 sons. Unbelievable. Now, an American war secretary named Monia Michael was so moved by the poem that she wrote, "And now the torch and poppy red wear in honour of the dead." And she bought some red poppies with some money given to her by work colleagues, and wearing one herself, she sold the rest to family and friends and gave money she raised to servicemen in need. Now, in France, Madame Ian Goodwin took up the idea of selling poppies for fundraising purposes, and then introduced the idea to the newly formed British Legion, who took it as their symbol. So it's actually a French woman who actually came up with the idea of selling poppies, and it's something that the British Legion, the Royal British Legion, have adopted ever since.
And Ian, I know you next wanted to cover welfare, I think.
Yeah, today the Legion provides financial, social and emotional support to serving and ex-serving members of the armed forces and their family. The motto, the sort of logo now has just been changed, live on. It's reflecting what things are doing, you know, not just the past but the future and everything that goes with it. And that means something like approximately 10.5 million people in the UK are eligible for help and assistance from the Legion. And that's 1 in 6 of the population. Now, our purpose is to help those in needs, and 160,000 calls were made to the Legion last year directly and helped 16,000 veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. We provide help to individuals in a range of different ways. For example, we can provide help with holidays, housing, mobility scooters, as well as providing financial assistance. We help veterans who served between the wars, right through to those who are still serving today. At the moment, we are getting more and more requests to help those and families of those who were returning from fighting in Afghanistan, although those requests are clearly gone down now. We provide help and support to people every day of the year, and to do that we need to raise a lot of money. We currently spend, think about this, £72 million a year. So every day on from those charities that the people of this country raise for us, we spend £200,000. And there are fundraising events happening all the way round, not just by members of the Legion, but by a great many our supporters. And one way we raise funds, probably the best known way, is through the annual Poppy Appeal. Myself, I'll be actually doing one for the National Memorial through the Royal British Legion Industries. I'm actually going to ride across the coast in June. It's looming now, right across the Pennines from the Irish Sea to the North Sea. So that should be interesting, because I've decided up for 3 nights I'm actually on the route. I'm going to sleep rough just to make it a little bit more tougher. You wouldn't want it to be hotels on the way, wouldn't one? So that's going to be an interesting experience.
Ian, I know you next wanted to cover membership.
Yeah, the Legion is not only a welfare organisation, but a membership organisation too, and it's got somewhere in the region of 340,000 members in 2,600 branches. And in Kent, there are over 10,000 members in 79 branches. And the good news is, this year, Sheerness branch won what's called the Moores Trophy for being the most efficient and effective branch in the whole of Kent. And we were absolutely delighted to receive that award. And I mean, without going into great details yet, because we are going to do the launch, the Queenborough sub-branch now is being subsumed into the Sheerness branch. And the idea now is to lay up the standard for the Sheerness branch and become what's called the Isle of Sheppey branch. And hopefully that'll unite all the former areas such as Minster, Laysdown, Eastchurch, which used to all have their own branches but have closed over the years. And when I took over this about 2 years ago, the idea was to increase membership, and the idea really was I set my heart on trying to try and get a united branch for the entire island, rather than just having one located for Sheerness. And we're almost at that point now where we can claim that, and we've got 92 members as well, and I wanted to get by the end of 2018 100 members as well, which would be nice in terms of the 100th centenary. And in total, if you look at the Royal British Legion, there are about 1 million members, volunteers, caseworkers and fundraisers. And in addition, we've got somewhere in the region of about 1.8 million followers on Facebook and Twitter. So no wonder we can proudly claim to be the #1 provider of welfare, comradeship, representation and remembrance for the armed forces community. We're always looking for new members, and after the next record I'm going to give you a number that you can contact of the branch secretary, and she will then be able to, if you want to join up. It's not an expensive thing. It's about £14 a year. We meet once a month. We have a social evening once a month. We meet up at the Co-op Club down in St George's Avenue in Sheerness.
And I think, Ian, you're going to go through some useful contact details.
Yeah, I did mention what the contact, if anyone wants to join us or they want further information, is to contact Mo Vaughan, Mooring Vaughan, on 01795 876935. I'll read that number out again. 01795 876935, and that's Mo or Mooring Vaughan, who's the secretary. And before we go, I did say I wanted to do a dedication. It's to a friend of mine called Lisa. Her son has just finished a rather long stint as one of the characters in the Willy Wonka, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory up in London. Obviously she's very proud of all of that. And Lisa was born in a fantastic northern town called Rochdale. And the listeners would may be interested to know that Rochdale is the home of the first cooperative society in the world. It's where the co-op was formed. But interestingly, in connection with the war, the Second World War, is Rochdale Town Centre. And if you've ever seen it, it's just utterly amazing. And Hitler gave the Luftwaffe strict instructions during the Second World War not to bomb it. Because the idea was, when he won the war, he was actually going to remove the Rochdale town centre brick by brick and take it all the way back to Bavaria and rebuild it there. So an interesting fact. So this one is for you, Lisa.
And Ian, as always, thank you very much for coming along.